Headphone highlights. Today we're talking about the Dekoni plus Hifiman. See, Dekoni, Hifiman Cobalts. There it is. I picked these up while I was at Can Jam in SoCal this year, and I've always kind of been looking at these. I haven't been super sure if I ever really wanted to pick them up, but they had a crazy good deal at the show. And I did finally get a chance to try them while I was at the show, and I really liked them. So I liked them, and they were a good deal. So now we got a set. Hurrah. If you've been on the channel for a while, you might kind of recognize how they look. And that's because they share a lot of similarities with these. These are the Drop plus Hifiman R7DXs. And as you can see, you got a couple of cereal bowls here. That's what we're looking at. Cereal bowls. One's a little bit more blue than the other one, and one has a cool screen print on it. So yeah, lots of similarities here, at least in terms of the construction. But yeah, Cobalts, very cool. And Dekoni is a brand we've talked about a good number of times, but not specifically about headphones, because Dekoni is known for their pads. That's what they specialize in, is making incredibly good headphone pads. I have a whole box full of Dekoni earpads that I swap in and out for all sorts of different headphones. They're amazing pads. I cannot recommend them enough. But this is a headphone by Dekoni. It's a collaboration, but still, headphone. They went with Hifiman to build this headphone, Dekoni. Okay, so there's that. It's cool. It's very neat to have their collaboration like that. Hifiman is really good about doing collaborations. I don't think as many headphone brands. I don't think I see many headphone brands do as much collaboration work as Hifiman does. So good guy Hifiman for letting people do these collabs, because this is super cool. They're very cool, and the build, it does, again, have a lot of similarities with the R7DXs, but there are some notable differences. So we're going to take a minute to look at the build here. This is mostly plastic. You have a metal yoke, and you got some faux leather on the headband, but it is a mostly plastic cereal bowl. I'll bring it up close so you can take a look. You got your nice Dekoni branding there, Dekoni audio, and then up here, Hifiman. So you got your cup here is plastic. This yoke is a steel yoke. It will allow for a little bit of tilting and the tiniest amount of swiveling. Just a little bit, but it's enough to kind of form fit to you. It's not that bad. The adjustment mechanism is a clicking mechanism. It's good. It's fine. It's a little spongy, but it's not too bad. The only real complaint I have with this adjustment system, it's not happening to my headphones yet. The inside right here will eventually get kind of gnarled and scratched from too much adjustments. It's just how it is. You got the painted metal there, and whatever is clicking into those holes will eventually kind of scratch off that paint. Not very sightly, but it's not the worst thing ever, especially if you're going to kind of just keep it to one size setting, I mean. So you got adjustments fine. You got your little plastic connection here into the headband, and the headband itself feels like it is probably spring steel. It does have a little bit of give to it, as you can see, but it is wrapped in this pretty nice, pretty decent protein leather here. This kind of faux leather. It's pretty soft. This is the same headband you see in a lot of the more recent Hifiman stuff. Like we have this exact same headband on the HE6SEs and the 560s, I think they're called. But yeah, it's the same headband as those kind of higher tier headphones. In comparison, if we want to take another look at the R7DXs, the R7DXs do have a very different looking headband. This is a more kind of retro style Hifiman band, and it looks like it's not nearly as much padding, and it's not nearly as much padding, but it is still decently soft, and it does allow for a lot more stretching. But I do kind of prefer the adjustment mechanism on these because it's just tension and it's a nice smooth slide, and it's not something I ever have to worry about it like scratching up the yoke on here. So, I mean, it's going to be a personal preference sort of thing, but I kind of prefer this headband myself. I like the look of it more. I think it looks cooler, but also it's just, at least for me, it fits me a little bit better. But we'll talk a little bit more about that with comfort. So headband's great, it's fine. The pads are where it's at. The pads, you get 2 sets of pads. Actually, let me show you here. With every Cobalt, you get 2 sets of pads. You get these, which are the fenestrated leather, okay? They're very soft, they're very nice. And these are designed for these Hifimans, because if you look at the shape here, it's like a teardrop. There you go. It's a teardrop. And it does have these little nubs around the edges to be able to kind of click in, because that's how they attach to the headphone. But so they're not going to fit just any kind of headphone. They are very much purposely built for these guys. So keep that in mind. But yes, you get the perforated leather, and then you also get this. It's not really a velour. They might call it velour, but it feels more like a t-shirt material. It's very, very soft, very, very smooth feeling. And again, really nice memory foam. You see that? Yeah, they're great. So good pads. And again, you get both sets with you in your box. That's very nice. It accepts dual entry 3.5mm here. And the cable that it comes with is okay. It's a good cable. Pop this out for you. It is just a leather cable. Oh my God. It is just a rubberized cable. So nothing super special there, but it's a nice rubberized cable. It's not super long. It's a good length. It's just very, very simple. A simple 3.5mm, dual 3.5mm termination there. And then a right angle to 3.5mm on the other end. Pair that with an adapter and there's your 1/4 inch. So it's super simple, but super effective. It's great. Actually, that's okay. Yeah, I was worried that maybe the length of the splitter wasn't very good, but it is. It's actually fine. It could be a pretty straight cable. You give it some time, it'll straighten out, so it's not super janky, which I really, really appreciate. So I like the cable. Cable's fine. It's just a little dull. Cable's a little bit dull. I kind of wish they went out of their way to have this big collaboration with Hifiman. I kind of was hoping they would do something a bit more special with the cable. It's just a little too plain. But it's functional and it works, and I really don't have much to complain about with it. Comfort. They're very, very light. All this plastic material makes them super, super light. These are a dynamic headphone. They're not planar, so you're not dealing with that planar weight. And really the only metal construction of the headphone is in these yokes and maybe the spring steel up in the headband. So they're very, very light. I'm not a huge fan of the headband. Now, I have other headphones with this exact headband, so I shouldn't be complaining about it too much, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it's specifically this headphone or if maybe I've just, for some reason, gotten more sensitive about it lately, but I don't really like how it feels on top of my head. It does give me a little bit of a pressure point, like right smack dab in the top middle of my head. Whereas the R7DX design, I don't think it does. Let's see here. Yeah, no, I don't get the same kind of pressure right smack dab in the middle of my head with these. So I do kind of prefer the classic headband for comfort and aesthetic. I still think this looks a little bit cooler, but I know that that's going to be subjective. It is kind of firm. I know it looks very plush, but there's not a significant amount of comfort padding here. You see that? It stops there. So you only get about a 1/4 inch of padding before you hit something hard. And there is definitely something hard in here. But I mean, I don't know. I really don't know, because yeah, with the freaking HE6 SEs, exact same headband, they feel great. So it might just be me. I don't know. So yeah, the headband's kind of a for me, but the pads are phenomenal. The pads are a huge upgrade from the default pads, the stock pads on the R7DXs, for example. I do prefer the velour pad, the more t-shirt material pad, over the leather perforated pads. The comfort on these is just, I feel a little bit nicer. The memory foam on these pads are just a little bit more memory foamy. Do you see that? They're lovely. That slow moving memory foam. I love it. But also, I prefer the sound with the velour as well. So yeah, the pads offer a huge amount of space. There's a lot of ear volume in here. So you're really not going to have to worry about the pads like really cramping and crunching on your ears. You got plenty of room in there. I got the beanie on, so it's not going to be the best example. But I throw these guys on, and no part of my ears are really touching the pads, like at all. Even with the beanie like deforming it a little bit. But yeah, the pads are great. The pads are fantastic. Oh, they're so nice. They do really good amounts of sound isolation. These are a closed back headset. But it's not super duper isolating. I can still kind of hear my fan. It's more like a semi-closed kind of sound. So it's middle of the road in terms of a sound isolation, but it's okay. It's good enough. And my voice is a little bit muffled. My fan's a little bit muffled. So it does definitely sound like you got something over your ears. And even if I kind of crunch them down, still, just there's a little bit of breathing. But it's not so much that I think you have to worry about sound kind of leaking out or anything like that. But they feel great on the ear. These pads are phenomenal. There's so much space, and they fit perfectly around the ear and form to your head. They are angled as well. If you see that, there you go. Yeah, you got the angled pads there, so they just hug on your ear. They're lovely. They're really, really nice. The perforated pads do the same thing. They don't have the same memory foam in them that the velour pads do. They just don't have the same amount of lusciousness. But these are still very, very nice. They're still very, very good pads, and it's very kind of Dekoni to incorporate both of them. That way you kind of have the option to not only tune your comfort a little bit, but also tune your sound a little bit, because swapping these pads affects the sound pretty significantly. So now let's talk about sound, because that's where I think we're going to have the most discussion. So when I first heard of the Cobalts, I was admittedly a little bit dismissive about them, because I just kind of thought they look like R7DXs. I already own a set of R7DXs. I don't really want another pair of R7DXs. I'm fine with the ones I have. I don't know if I'm convinced they're going to be that different. And it wasn't until I got to try them at CanJam did I hear them and realize, no, there is definitely a difference in sound. Trying these at CanJam, I didn't have the R7DXs with me at the time to do a side-by-side comparison, but it is a departure from the R7DXs. There is a pretty significant difference comparing them side by side. There's a little bit of an asterisk to that, which we'll get to later, but I will kind of try to give you a general description of how these sound. Versus the R7DXs, okay? We already did a review on them, so if you wanted to go see how these sound, I do love these things. There is a video for that. But if we're comparing them to the R7DXs, smoother and warmer. You get more low end out of this thing, a lot more low end and a lot more sub bass. The low end is very, very, very clean low end. It's very natural sounding low end, and it does hit harder in the sub bass. Mid-range performance is a little bit bumped up. It's a little bit more forward, a little bit more mid-range focused. So you're getting lots of really good details in that majority of the frequency range. It's not as bright and energetic in the trebles as the R7DXs. The R7DXs do have a bit more of a crispiness to them than the Cobalts. The Cobalts, they are able to still hit nice, good highs and reach really nice details in those highs, but where sometimes certain frequencies were a little bit too sharp, a little bit too fatiguing on the R7DXs, this controls them down just a bit, just a tiny bit of a roll off on some of those higher frequency notes to make it a lot more smooth. Again, this is a very smooth sound. It's very relaxed, a very relaxed headphone, while also being very, very natural. Your vocal range is very, very nice. Vocals have they're leading towards what could be a pretty nice timbre. Probably much more natural sounding vocals than you get out of the R7DXs. They feel like they're more resolving. They feel like they're a much more resolving headphone than the R7DXs. You're getting more detail out of these. And that's a little bit surprising because the R7DXs are a more intimate headphone than these. I know I talked about how the R7DXs, for a closeback, have a pretty good amount of soundstage and a good amount of spatial awareness and atmosphere and immersion. With these pads, because they are separating you even further away from the driver and there's so much more ear volume in these pads, these way outperform the R7DXs in terms of soundstage. Ooh, the soundstage on these things is kick-ass. It's fabulous. Gaming on these, watching movies on these, or just really letting yourself sit down and be immersed in a large ensemble of music, it's lovely. The soundstage is fabulous. For a closeback, it's one of the better performing sound stages I've heard in a closeback, and that's saying something, because man, These are awesome for soundstage. Oh my goodness. Imaging is still very, very good. Again, it's not as intimate as it is with the R7DXs. So the imaging performance is maybe not as, I don't want to say it's not as precise. It is still pretty dang precise. It's just not as directly into your brain the way it is with the 7DXs. Gaming on these is a real joy. It's great for gaming, doing some Baldur's Gate with these things, because Baldur's Gate has really excellent kind of atmospheric sound and music and effects and whatever. Sounds great. I mean, everything, it sounds super immersive. Really, really super immersive. And again, the imaging is pretty precise. It's just not as intimate and quick beaming into your brain as it is with the R7DXs. So that's the difference there. So yes, pretty big difference in how they sound compared to the R7DXs. But now let's talk about this asterisk a little bit. And I need to be careful here a little bit because I want to make sure I'm not trying to smack the hornet's nest here, but it is something that I want to talk about because it's something that I noticed and I feel that it is warranted to discuss a little bit. So no doubt, physically, a lot of similarities with the R7DXs and the Cobalts. That's pretty clear. So it makes sense to me that when I'm testing out the Cobalts, I did a lot of testing compared to the R7DXs. Same chassis build, everything seems very, very similar. So I did lots of testing comparing it to this. And that included swapping pads around. So I'll get more into detail on this, but taking these pads, these velour pads that came with the Cobalts, and throwing them on the R7DXs, it was remarkably similar. Very, very similar. To the point where I'm not entirely sure if the difference that I was hearing, because I did feel like I did hear a difference. When I put these two headphones side by side with the exact same pads and A/B tested between them, I do feel like I heard just the slightest difference between the two, but it felt pretty negligible. So I don't know if that difference I was hearing was maybe just a placebo effect. I don't know if maybe it's just because this is a newer pair of headphones versus the R7DXs, which I've had a little bit longer. I don't know if there is an actual difference in the build and the drivers. We'll go over that. Or if, I don't know, maybe just some manufacturing difference between the two. I don't know. But it was interesting to me that there was very little difference in terms of their sound performance when they were equipped with the exact same pads. And again, taking the Cobalt velour pads, throwing them on the R7DXs, sounded very, very similar. So when I noticed how similar that they sounded, I decided to kind of explore it a little bit more, and I took them apart. I opened up, took off the pads, removed I'll show it to you right now, because these are pretty easy to take apart. The pads just kind of pop off. They're a little bit of a pain in the butt to get off, actually. These freaking pads. You feel like you're gonna break them, but you're not. You gotta kind of naggle it a little bit. There we go. So if you look here, here's the plate. The plate is connected by these tiny little screws, and that's it. That's really the only thing that you have to remove. So I took the plates off of both the R7DXs and the Cobalts to see if there was, what kind of differences are going on under the hood, like in the actual chassis. Because again, they have the same build, but when I opened them up, I realized that they also are almost exact mirrors of each other on the inside. They're the kind of tuning material and dampening foam material that they use is the same square cutout piece of foam, the same density foam, the exact same foam, placed in the exact same place on the back inside of the bolt. And there's no additional padding, no additional kind of tuning in there. The drivers appear visually to be maybe the same. I can't confirm that. I don't know for sure if they're the same or not. I can't find like schematics on these things to see what the actual model number driver, Hifiman driver that they are using. But on a visual inspection, they look very, very, very similar. So Dekoni says that they put a carbon-coated diaphragm, like a carbon coating on the diaphragm of their driver for the Cobalt. I don't know if that carbon coating is on the driver in the R7DXs. The R7DXs don't specify that, so that could be a difference. It could be that they're using that carbon coating on the driver on the Dekoni model which the R7DXs might be lacking. That's a possibility. I don't know for sure. I actually reached out to Dekoni to try and get a little bit of clarification on this because I really wanted to make sure where they differentiate, where they delineate from each other, because on a visual inspection alone, just visually, it looks to me like they are the same headphone, but that the Dekonis use special Dekoni pads and a different headband and a different yoke system. But the actual like cups and the drivers are the same. So, like, I'm not confirming that. I'm not saying that is the case. I don't know. And if anyone does know for sure, if anyone has more information on that, please put it in the chat so we can have confirmation. I would love to know what, you know, is going on here if there is a difference. That was very interesting to me to see just how freaking similar these appear to be built, and how very, very similar they kind of sounded when put in the right scenario. So all that said, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, if you don't already own one of these, Cobalt is arguably the better one. You get 2 sets of pads, you get what is considered a more high-end headband, even if I personally don't prefer it, and you get cool Dekoni branding. If you already own the R7DXs and would like to have, or at least try out, the sound profile of the Cobalt, hold on to them and just get yourself a set of the Dekoni Elite. Either the sheepskin perforated, which is what these are. These are the sheepskin perforated pads for the Cobalt, or the velour Elite pads for the Cobalt. And then, again, you're going to be getting very, very, very close to the Cobalt sound with those pads alone. So that's kind of what I wanted to kind of get at. You want the Cobalt sound, but already have these things, just buy the pads. If you don't have either of them, then sure, go right for the Cobalts, because I do think that they're arguably the better of the two. I mean, the tuning on this with these pads is just so freaking lovely. Oh, and I do love my R7DXs, make no mistake. I do love them. And I do think that they're still situationally a headphone to hold on to, because again, they're a lot more intense, a lot more intimate. So if you really need that kind of sound, they're great for that. But these butter things up a little bit, make them super, super smooth and enjoyable, and really expand the soundstage. Oh boy. Awesome soundstage. The Cobalts, they're great. I had a great time trying them out in CanJam. The guys at Dekoni are amazing. I love Dekoni pads. I love the guides at Dekoni. They're so nice. They're so great. And I hope that they do more headphone stuff, because this is, besides these, the only other Dekoni headphone collaboration I've ever heard are, of course, the Dekoni Blues, which are the T50 RP mod from Fostex. So, but yeah, there they are. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll be seeing you again very soon.